Hello, good morning. I'm Dhiraj Shetty. I'm a partner with Heidrick and part of the global industrial practice.
I am Charul Madan, a partner at Heidrick India office, and I'm also a member of the Global Technology and the CEO and Board practice. We are excited to welcome Ravi Kyran, CHRO at Bajaj Auto, an Indian multinational company that manufactures and sells motorcycles, scooters, and three-wheelers globally. Ravi brings a wealth of HR and business leadership experience across both multinational and Indian headquartered organizations. Since joining Bajaj in 2017, he has led the company's global HR agenda, overseeing more than 10,000 employees across 7 countries in the Americas, Europe, and Asia. Ravi, thank you very much for joining us today. To begin with, Ravi, based on your experience across US and Indian headquartered organizations, what similarities and differences have you observed in successful leaders? And how are you applying those lessons or leadership attributes as you guide your company towards a global role?
After having spent considerable amount of time in the US and also having while I was with TI across the globe with various cultures, teams across Germany, different parts of Europe, Japan, Korea, and now back again in India. I actually find more similarities amongst successful leaders, I would say, than dissimilarities, and that was honestly a surprising reflection when he looked at it. One is clarity. They are all very, very clear in terms of where they are going. There is no confusion in their heads, and that is so important because at the end of the day, a leadership is to lead, and people want to follow. And unless you are able to have that clarity in your thought, clarity in your action, of purpose, it's very difficult to actually engineer an entire organization, especially in a multinational world, to be able to go towards what you want them to go. So that singular clarity that I've seen, it's almost cuts across all cultures. The second one I've also seen is the focus. A lot of people, unfortunately nowadays, they lack focus. You could easily get distracted by the shiny objects. Every time you see a shiny object, you get diverted and you start wasting your organization's focus and your focus towards that. That actually sets back an organization and it actually takes time to get back on the rail. Again, successful leaders I've seen, they are so clear in their focus that when they see a shiny object, even though at that point in time they are able to remind the organization that that's not your focus, be focused on where you are. Pretty much everybody will know where the company is headed. Pretty much everybody will know what is required of them. They don't necessarily have to go and keep checking or worrying about is there something that they are missing out. That actually kind of smoothens the rails and things actually start moving quite rapidly. And third one, I would say, would be balance. I think this is so underrated, but one thing I've personally seen it with the CEO of TI that I worked with very closely, the multiple other senior VPs with Rajiv Bajaj here and many other leaders across the globe, they have an innate sense of balance. They know when something needs to get amplified. They know when something needs to get attenuated. They know when to listen to something, when to actually not listen to, when to look for data, when to look for intuition. That the entire balance is such a crucial piece. Not very well talked about, not very well, unfortunately, researched or taught. The one thing about leadership is whatever the leader says, the rest of the organization ends up amplifying. So if there is a lack of balance, then that gets amplified below, which actually destabilizes the organization. Whereas if there is balance, then the balance gets amplified, and then that actually stabilizes the organization. And another thing which I've actually seen is their ability to listen. And I'm not talking about the standard listening. This is actually deeply listen. Rajiv Bajaj is a great example of that. When he's actually listening, he actually is able to turn off the data from who is telling, from what is being said. That's extremely important because you may have your personal likes, dislikes, you may have your personal affinity towards somebody and may not have that same affinity with somebody else. All of those echoes actually comes into the information that you're getting, unfortunately, as a human being. Your ability to actually kind of tune off those and focus on the message, the deep listening, I have seen them actually be able to then get to the crux of the problem much more quicker and actually be able to get to a solution. And I think these are the things which I've seen across cultures amongst the best of the leaders.
Ravi, Bajaj Auto emphasizes on long-term profitability with purpose. How does the company balance that perspective with today's uncertain world? And what effect does the long-term perspective have on the leadership needs and capabilities?
I personally believe that the world has always been uncertain, the world will always be uncertain. And at the end of the day, the problem today is people forget that business is actually a business. There are a lot of people who are not running a business, they're running a valuation game, right? We're just trying to run a business for valuation versus running a business that is going to last you or me. That's when it becomes an institution. Then you're actually doing things what is right for the business basis the long term, not this quarter's profit or that IPO that is going to come in tomorrow or the next round of fundraising that I need to do. One has to understand that business is a separate entity by itself, and that needs to be created for the future. We have to consider ourselves as leaders as custodians. Once you stop thinking yourself as an owner, an investor, once you start thinking, you just think of yourself as a custodian, where you are actually making it better, and then you're handing it over to the next generation. And if that generation does the same and the next generation does the same, then you'll have a company which will last hundreds of years or so. I think a company like Bajaj Auto does this exceedingly well than anybody else, I would say, is that the foundational clarity in terms of what is this business about? What are we here for? And that focus is on the business. What is right for the business? To give you a good example would be during COVID. Many companies cut costs, many companies shut down investments. Rajiv Bajaj actually ended up increasing our investments in R&D. I remember actually introducing a complete digitized way of learning into Bajaj. Big investment right in the middle of COVID because we still want to train our people and skill them. Most companies would have stopped the learning and development expenses because it is easier to do to cut cost. We actually spent more because we knew that the cost of not skilling your people is for the long term would be more than actually cutting the cost now. And I think that is the perspective difference, right? Because if you're thinking what is right for the business, you know inherently that 2 quarters, 3 quarters later, the business is going to be normal as usual or it will bounce back. In which case, then why would you take decisions which is dangerous for the business just for the couple of quarters, results? I think that is the difference, I would say.
One of the things that we are seeing is that there is this whole aspect about building a global culture and future ready leadership. As Indian organizations play a larger role globally, what qualities do you think are essential for their leaders to succeed across diverse markets and cultures? And how can they build a globally inclusive culture?
One thing I have noticed, though, is that while the cultures are different, communication styles are different, language is different, I have seen a very strong commonality amongst people across all cultures. Typically, if you look at ourselves from a human being point of view, at least in a professional environment, I would say, we all share very similar aspirations. We share similar fears. We share similar insecurities. And honestly, these are the ones psychologically that shape the way we actually deal with each other. So I always believed that we should focus on the common. If you keep focusing on trying to make somebody into you or making yourself into somebody, that truly doesn't actually engineer the real closeness. The real closeness comes when you actually focus on the commonality. Your love for something, your passion for something, your reason for coming to work, the purpose, the impact that you want to create, ability to actually add value to yourself or ability to add value to something else, you being recognized for what you bring to the table. Diversity exists, and that exists for good reason. Last thing I would say for from an Indian leadership, as we are actually growing, globally in influence, is that it's, in my opinion, actually very, very important. Is that there are certain style that we have, and the style comes from what we are innately as beings with our culture, what we have grown up with. I think we need to have confidence in the culture, confidence in what makes us what we are, rather than try to ape something else. I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of leaders try to be somebody else, try to be an Elon Musk, try to be a Steve Jobs. You can take inspiration from anybody. I have nothing against it, but you want to try to be somebody else that you're not inherently. It kind of shows up after some time. Each one of those leaders are great leaders in their own sense of the being because they are what they are at core. So I think that is what is important, in my opinion. Culture and value-based leadership is something that I've seen tremendously existing a lot among the Indian leadership. And not just the global ones. I'm saying even within the Indian corporate sector, a lot of wonderful leaders are there. They all have a certain culture and leadership. I think those are perfectly global, in my opinion. As long as we end up as an organization focusing on the commonalities and then bridging the people through the commonality while accepting the divergences, I think we would have a great ability to influence the globe.
What steps are you taking to ensure that Bajaj Auto's leadership pipeline is ready for this global future?
Yeah, this is a huge challenge. One is, of course, you have to build your internal pipeline, but at the same time, one always have to be on the lookout for great talent outside too. One should not be insular enough to think that every talent only exists within ourselves. Most of our leadership team, not all, but many of our leadership team actually have come from outside and have had wonderfully successful career with us. But also we have a very strong focus on what do we do internally, right? I think from everything from identification of these wonderful talent and as early as possible, and then ability to actually understand what is needed for them. You can call it nurturing. It is not just simple programmatic stuff. It is very customized. It's very individualized. Because individual focus and nurturing plan is to ensure that these early spotted high potential talent is actually being able to grow. And then, of course, bluntly put, it is about taking chances and throwing them on challenges. I still remember my ex-boss, Darla Whitaker, who was a senior VP for TI, once when she offered me I would say a very, very important and a substantial role. And I was very young at the time, in my early 30s, and I was like shocked. And I asked her, I don't think I'm ready, Darla. And her answer still resonates with me. She said, Ravi, if I wait till you're ready, then I'm too late. I think that's a brilliant way of putting it, right? So if we wait till anybody is ready, when you're trying to take chances on them, it's already too late. Somebody else will take the chance on them. When you're looking at like skills, we have something called a skill matrix. Every role has different levels of skill, basic, intermediate, expert levels. Every single individual is assessed constantly against that. And then a development plan is created for each one of them to say how they can move from one skill level to the other. At an aggregate level, also, we are able to look at for this particular skill, how many people do we have at each level of expertise. Also, we are able to get that. And even in each department wise, we can get the data. So it's a very, very structured way of approaching in terms of how to develop skills. Then we have something called a talent council where all this data is actually looked at and then we actually identify the person. Recently, we've created Bajaj Auto Credit Limited. We have Bajaj Auto Technologies. We are actually supporting KTM now, and then we have been able to establish multiple organizations in the globe. This has to be a very, very grounds up, well thought through, and a very process driven approach needs to be there for leadership development. The same way you will develop a product. You can't just create a product out of thin air one day. You need to have a very structured product development process. Similarly, a leader is like that. You have to have a structured process to be able to bring that. That is what we do.
The manufacturing sector is evolving rapidly, from mechanical engineering to software and AI. How have these changes reshaped your talent strategy and talent management?
Yeah, this has been a huge challenge, honestly, Charles. I think you all had a ringside view of this. When I joined Bajaj Auto about 8.5, 9ish years ago, we primarily were hiring mechanical folks. Our people were primarily from the auto sector, and it was all the nice positioning that we had. But then the world started changing. Let's say if we had hiring 200 engineers from college in a year, 9 years ago, about 195 of them would have been mechanical. But the other five could have been, smattering of some electrical, maybe one odd electronics, but not much. That's what it was. To now, believe it or not, this year, we hire more non-mechanical engineers from campus in a year than actually mechanical engineers. And that's the truth. So everything from software to firmware to electronics to electromechanical stuff to mechanical. Suddenly, the gamut of the talent that we need has become mind-bogglingly complex. But the good thing is the fundamentals are still the same. So we had to rework our entire campus strategy. We had to be able to showcase to people the quality of work, and that's what I always believed in. It has been a rapid but a difficult build out process, but now actually it has been wonderful for the organization. I would say it's wonderful for the industry because I think more such diversity would mean more opportunity for us to get different capabilities into the system. And I think even candidates are very happy because now suddenly there are more opportunities. You don't necessarily have to only work in a quote unquote software service providing organization. You can actually work for OEMs and still be able to do what you love.
And Ravi, specifically within the space, the domain that you lead, right? So how have technology advancements impacted the HR space, and which HR innovations you think have had the biggest impact for you?
Ultimately, HR, I would say, is a microcosm of the organization, right? So I think organizations have had to take technology and adapt to it. And I think HR had to do it. Some companies, HR could be lagging behind. Some companies, it could be, right along with the rest of the organization, etc. I actually think HR landscape has dramatically changed in terms of technology. With the last 2 or 3 years, the rapidity of the changes even, increased. So data leads to dashboard, that leads to insight, insights lead to action. So you think of it this way beautifully. ERP systems got you data, then your Power BIs, etc., gave you dashboard, and then your artificial intelligence system started giving you insights. But now, with the Chat GPT world environment, etc., you can actually create actions, or what's the best actions in the world that anybody could use for a similar insight. I think that could get generated and get right into your hand. So to me, it is just absolutely exciting, the kind of work that we are doing. But in every one of these areas that I'm talking about, we are actually working on today, from predictive analytics to insights generators to action plan generators. Extremely exciting space, honestly. It's a great time to working in HR. I only wish that this had happened about 15, 20 years ago. Then I would have had more time, to enjoy the technology. As I'm coming into possibly the last decade of my career, I'm like missing that thing. Many organizations still run with dashboards. I think they will all soon enough move to insights generators. They will start moving towards action plan generators, etc. And then life becomes easy. You're not going to waste your time in crunching data. Somebody else can do it better than you. Trust me, that system will be able to do it much better than what you can. But doesn't mean that you can be replaced. Your time would get freed up from more and more, so to speak, grunt work, to be able to do actual true impact driven influencing world, which also means that our skill set would have to become more and more on influence based. Your ability to actually drive cultural change, your ability to actually make people go in the right direction. If you have those, I think then you will be able to thrive in this environment.
All the things that we've just talked about, if you could just further it a little bit on the role of the HR leader itself changing over the next, 5 to 10 years. Any further input and perspective on that?
Charles, I'll give you an example, right? So I think this is where we have to challenge our own assumptions. During COVID, we had actually created a wonderful digital platform, right? Pretty much 95% of our learning is more digital, and digital in the sense that it's in the today's world, people want it then and there. They're not willing to wait. So they want data on their mobile when they're traveling. They want to be able to learn a course, learn a skill, even have interactive learning, instructor-led learning by somebody sitting in Stanford, and they want the skill set here. This is what people value, and they wanted to also learn at their own pace. We were doing this digitally, and the assumption was we can do this for the management staff. And I was looking at it and saying, when I go to my factories and I see my workers, even for leave, they have to, during the lunchtime or whatever, go to what is called quote unquote time office and stand and then fill an application for the leave. And then they are worrying about their attendance. That attendance 2 days, that guy will show a printout, or 2 days, but I was there, what happened? And that actually led to me thinking, why is this digital only for this? I took inspiration from UPI, right? Because you have an UPI payment system in India where somebody who's not gone to school is able to use a wonderful digital technology. That's the prime example of how digital technology can change somebody. Right? So I was just thinking, so are we letting our assumptions color our actions? And then I just went back to the drawing board, and then we actually created an entire roadmap of completely digital tech enabling everything from their attendance. And now they don't even need to punch in. They come in, automatic attendance comes into play for them. They are super thrilled. They are able to, and we did it in vernacular with voice assistant, etc. So they're able to actually apply for leave, and they're able to get it approved in the system. The zero paperwork now completely cut. Learning. Then we said, let's challenge them. Let's give learning. And 5,000, 6,000 of those category of employees, at least Bajaj Auto, where we piloted it, we thought we'll get maybe a 10% uptick or 20% uptick on or subscribers to that. 98% have already subscribed to it, of which 71% have already done a course within a couple of months. And almost every one of them are enrolled in multiple courses without any push, without anything, just pure pull. Every single worker has courses, multiple courses assigned to them, which is relevant to their role. And they also have self-development courses that they can, get into. And almost every one of them loving it. So it's actually a great time to be in the business world today, in all sense of the word, especially for HR.
What is the advice you're offering to the up and coming HR leaders that are coming through Bajaj Auto and general in the ecosystem? How should they think about the experiences that they seek, the kind of opportunities that they should sort of go after?
I personally have learned that I became a better HR person once I understood my purpose and my passion. Initially, everybody is wondering, right? What is HR? What are we here for? What value do we add? Comparing yourself with other businesses. Once it happened, everything clicked for me, right? So I would never underestimate the power of passion. And for that, you have to understand what is your purpose, what are you driving towards. And that's what has kept me going now in 31 years of career. Still energetic, still coming to work every day with passion. I think without that passion, I don't think you can last long, right? Because if you want a career, it's not about a sprint, it's a marathon. If you're able to hone in on that passion of yours and then understand the value that you're able to bring into the space, I think the rest will be honestly normal, right? Just trust yourself.
And finally, just also wanted to step back more at a macro level, just wanted to ask you this last thing. As you look at India's growing global influence, where do you see the strongest opportunities for Indian leaders to thrive, and what headwinds should they be prepared for?
I think the strongest opportunities are going to be in India. I actually keep telling people that the next 20, 25 years is going to be India's time. The population is growing, population is digital, the financial systems are set right, the economy is very strong and resilient. So I would say more and more global leadership emanating from India or Indian companies becoming more globally dominant. And the only thing I would again go back and say, which maybe I've already alluded to earlier, is that we need to be sure of what we are, right? We need to be confident in what we are, not try to be somebody else. We don't need to, with all due respect to other multinational companies across the globe, right? Each one has their own strengths, but they're all a different organization. We have our own ability to create our own culture, right? And organizational culture. We should be able to do that. We should be able to drive that. And that is good. There is no need for us to be something else to become global leaders. We can be ourselves and still be global leaders. I think that quite innate confidence, I think, is what is really needed in the leaders. Honestly, from a skill set point of view, from intelligence point of view, from hardworking point of view, in every sense of the word, entrepreneurship, the ability to take risks, ability to manage challenges, we have it all there. Amongst the most developed, we are relatively speaking a young country, so to speak, in the current structure. So therefore, maybe the only thing that we need to work on would be that confidence, right? So, and the ability to accept that, yes, we now have an opportunity to be on the global stage as leaders and as Indian leaders and leading Indian companies, leading in the global stage. I have no doubts whatsoever that it's India's time for the next 20, 25 years at least.
Ravi, again, thank you for your time and always a pleasure interacting with you. Really appreciate you sharing your journey with us here. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dhiraj. It was, as always, interesting to talk to both of you. You make me think and talk about stuff which I normally otherwise don't. So it's always fun, chatting with you guys. Thank you.